In terms of camera hardware, the Zenfone Max Pro M2 comes with a dual rear camera setup, while the primary one is a 12 megapixel Sony IMX486 sensor with f1.8 aperture and 1.25 micron pixel sensor size. The secondary one here is a 5 megapixel depth sensing unit with f2.0 aperture lens with 1.12 micron pixel. Now talking about the front facing camera, it got a 13 megapixel f2.0 aperture lens with 1.12 micron pixel, and then you also get a tiny little LED flash which will definitely help you to get better pictures in dark environment conditions. To be honest with you, the Max Pro M2 carries the best camera hardware under 15k pricing. But the camera UI here doesn't do justice to the camera sensor, which is the Sony IMX486, which also used before on the Xiaomi Mi A2, and that device known to be having the best camera under mid-range pricing. So the camera sensor here is pretty capable to give you best image out of it, but the camera UI on the Max Pro M2 is a bit tricky, and to take full advantage of the camera sensor you need to install the Z-Cam. So you also get some of the beautification mode, and then you also have manual control over the bokeh effect. Then you also get the HDR mode, pro mode to use the full advantage of the sensor. So there is a lot of things to play with, and also you can record video at 4K 30 fps, and at 1080p 30 fps you also get the EIS. Now the front facing camera here is a 13 megapixel sensor with f2.0 aperture lens. They also have some of the beautification mode, and as was also added the bokeh effect for the front facing camera with the recent photo service update, and they also get the tiny little LED flash which can be used even in darker environment to give you the best results. Also the front camera can record 1080p 30 fps video with electronic image stabilization. Now let's take a look at some of the camera sample taken in the Max Pro M2 using the stock camera UI. Now turning on the HDR mode, there is a big difference in the sharpness, the saturation, the dynamic range. Everything is perfect when you turn on the HDR mode. There is a big difference in the image, and you can clearly notice that in these samples. Now looking at these indoor lighting samples, you can clearly notice that the HDR mode just reduced the noise in that picture, improved the dynamic range and the color. So the HDR mode working properly on the Max Pro M2 even with the stock camera UI. The Max Pro M2 carries a 5 megapixel depth sensing unit along with the rear facing camera only to provide you best portrait mode or the depth mode. Here you also have manual control over the blur effect which you want to set in your picture. Now looking at this sample, you can clearly notice that the age detection on this bokeh mode or the portrait mode is really superb on the Max Pro M2 camera, and I'm pretty surprised with the portrait mode. This not only working with a person or a human being, also it works with the object, and the age detection is really amazing on the Max Pro M2 portrait mode. The 5 megapixel camera for depth sensing working pretty great, and also I'm pretty surprised with the Max Pro M2 camera portrait mode in comparison to the last year Max Pro M1. Here the depth sensing or the portrait mode works pretty great, and you can clearly notice in these samples that the portrait mode or the bokeh effect having the best age detection at this budget pricing. Even in artificial lighting, the portrait mode or the bokeh effect working properly on the Max Pro M2, the age detection is pretty perfect. Even in dark environment, focusing the subject and give it the artificial blur is really working good on the Max Pro M2, and I think this is just happening after the recent photo service update which improved the HDR mode and also the bokeh background effect working properly. The age detection is pretty perfect even in dark environment conditions. Now the single 13 megapixel front camera, the Max Pro M2 also capable to give you the best bokeh background effect using only software. Now looking at this front camera sample, you can clearly notice the edge detection here is pretty perfect. You find the balanced blur with better dynamic range even with the bokeh mode. In dark environment or artificial lighting, you may find some noise, but the edge detection is pretty perfect even with the front camera without even having a secondary lens for the bokeh background effect. In artificial lighting or full dark environment, you can also use the tiny little LED flash which also help you to get a better picture from the camera sensor, and I'm pretty impressed with the front camera samples. Now this video sample recorded at 4K 30 fps on the Zenfone Max Pro M2 rear facing camera, and there you don't get any type of stabilization, but yeah, the video looks crisp and the color saturation looks pretty good. So let me know what do you think about the 4K sample from the rear facing camera of the Zenfone Max Pro M2, and how is the autofocus here. Let's just check. As you can see, the autofocus is pretty good and the color accuracy is really nice on the Zenfone Max Pro M2 rear facing camera at 4K 30 fps. So let's now switch to 100p. Now this video sample recorded at 100p from the rear facing camera of the Zenfone Max Pro M2, and at 100p 30 fps there you find image stabilization. Electronic image stabilization also works here great, and that is how it looks on the rear facing camera. And let me know what you think about the image stabilization on the rear facing camera. And the autofocus is pretty fast on the Zenfone Max Pro M2 rear camera, and the panning, there is no issue, there is no glitter effect with the EIS. The EIS works pretty great and the image stabilization looks pretty great for its budget pricing. So that is how the video sample looked like at 100p with electronic image stabilization. Now this video sample recorded at 100p from the front facing camera of the Zenfone Max Pro M2, which got a 13 megapixel f2.0 aperture lens on the front, and surprisingly there you get the electronic image stabilization which works pretty great, but for that reason you get smaller frame to record a video. It's cropped in the video, it doesn't look that good, but the stabilization is really satisfying for this budget price range. And also the exposure control looks pretty good, there you get a sharpened image in the video. So let me know what do you think about the video stabilization. Now this video sample recorded at 100p from the front facing camera of the Zenfone Max Pro M2. Now this video sample look noisy, but at this price category there are a lot of devices also offers you the same type of video sample from their front facing camera. However, the Zenfone Max Pro M2, they will get electronic image stabilization. They will get a cropped in video, but it looks amazing because the image stabilization is really great on the front camera video sample. Additionally, accessories also include a tiny little LED flash which you can use in dark environment to give you a better brighten up image, and even in video samples you can turn on the tiny little LED flash to get you a brighten video sample from the front facing camera. Now this is how the front camera sample looked like in indoor lighting conditions when you turn on the tiny little LED flash present alongside with the front facing camera. So it will definitely gonna help you give you a better brighten up image and also help you shooting videos in fully dark environment. And also the tiny little LED flash can make a big difference in the video sample as well. So that is how it looks when you turn on the tiny little LED flash present on the front facing camera. So if you are confused between the Realme 2 Pro and the Max Pro M2, just wait for the camera comparison video which is coming out soon. And if you like this video, you know what to do. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.